What trait do you most resent your parents for passing on to you? Story 1. I don't resent my parents for the traits I've been passed, but I have a pretty bad case of ichthyosis, essentially really dry skin. During my years of school, I would always forget my gym clothes and tend to wear long-sleeve shirts and pants year-round because people would always pick on me for it. No lotions I tried worked, so it was always bad, more so during the winter. Since then, I found ammonium lactate lotion helps this, and I've gotten a good handle on it. Definitely wish I knew that when I was in school. It wasn't a good feeling being known as a lizard. I've also always had very thin hair, and I'm currently balding at 24. Can't foresee having much hair by 26 to 27, and I'm relatively short. But hey, I was gifted with a pretty decent hog, and have found the love of my life who accepts me for me, so I guess things aren't so bad. Hell yeah! Always look on the bright side, and I'm glad you were eventually able to find something that helps, though it sucks dealing with that during school. School is hard enough without genetics piling on. As far as the going bald, well, as someone who shaves their head, might I suggest just leaning into it? Works for me. Story 2. Misophonia. I'm a super chill person otherwise, but for the longest time I get super mad if anyone was eating, drinking, swallowing, breathing audibly, or making any kinds of sounds. Pretty much anything short of speaking and sitting still pushed my buttons. With a lot of acknowledgement of my faults, I'd slowly been able to cope and even lessen the effect, however. The biggest thing I tell myself is that it is my fault, not the people around me, and I feel calmer. Sadly, my dad won't listen to my advice on the matter and constantly blames those around him. Then when I snap at him for snapping, he plays the guilt trip card. That dude just won't seem to take responsibility. Story 3. My feet smelled so bad in my teenage years I must have filled an entire classroom even if my shoes were on. I found a product online about 15 years ago that actually eliminated it completely. At that point, I would have poured acid on my feet to get them to stop smelling. The product is Exuber from JMG Products. It's almost like a paste you put on before for a few days. Completely wipes out the bacteria on your feet that causes it. Requires periodic maintenance, but it completely eliminated foot odor for me, and mine was awful. That is such a rough one to deal with in school. Oof, I am so sorry. But hey, good on you for sharing the secret overcoming it. I'm pretty sure there's some struggling teen out there that is going to see this and will be thanking you for the rest of their life. Story 4. Cataclysmic craps. This is my family too. At get-togethers like Thanksgiving, the bathrooms are always full and smell like crap for days. My mom is the only one in the family that doesn't get explosive diarrhea all the damn time. Some of our favorite family stories involve trying to deal with explosive poops. Crapping in a bush while on a jog, crapping on the side of the road and it having the force to reach the fence. Crapping your pants because you couldn't make it to the bathroom. Story 5. Combine really sweaty hands with being more than averagely social. Shaking hands is naturally the first thing I do when I meet someone new, so they usually get the impression that I peed on my hand or I'm one very sweaty bastard. It's hard because personal relationships involve a lot of touching and you can't build if they assume you're sweaty everywhere. Also, sweaty hands are disgustingly soft, so it's just a weird feeling to other people. Squishy, warm, and wet, the devil's triad when it comes to things not hoo-haws. Might I suggest a timelessly cool look of wearing fingerless gloves all the time? Perhaps owning a collection of them so you can wash them regularly. I honestly have no idea if it is still cool or not, but wear it with confidence and you'll make it cool. I dress like either a hippie or someone who time-traveled from the late 90s, but I look super cool. Right? Story 6. My dad can never ask a question directly. I think it's because he's worried the question will provoke a negative response, but his solution of asking around the question until people get irritated isn't any better. I found myself doing the exact same thing with my mom the other day. I have to keep checking that I'm asking what I want to know instead of trying to get the other person to respond in a way I want them to. Example, Dad wants to know if Mom bought apples. Normally you just say, "Did you get apples?" My dad says, "Were fruits on sale? Were you in the fruit aisle? Did you check the shopping list? Did you unload all the groceries in their proper place?" And so on. Since I've also inherited a temper from both parents, the 20 questions always devolves into a fight. Fun times. Story 7. An explosive temper. You'd never guess by speaking to me that I have rage issues. I've worked really hard to not be like my dad. I don't let much get to me and try to live a mostly carefree life. If something sets me off, though, it's terrifying to see that person come out. It used to just be when I drank. I slowly see it more and more. It scares me sometimes. Honestly, there can be a lot of things that bring that stuff on and a number of ways to deal with it. It can be a symptom of ADHD for starters. And there are methods that you can learn for dealing with angry outbursts. I speak as someone who has dealt with inheriting very brief but angry outbursts from my family, and I honestly feel like I've really grown and made progress. You don't have to give up and accept it. I believe in you. Story 8. We all have massive calves and small ears. Really small. Both parents, oily skin, though I'm sure I'll appreciate it when I don't get as many fine lines. My mom, just big legs. Not fat, muscular, I guess, and big knees. My significant other calls them rugby players' legs. My dad, my preference is to just sit and listen/absorb, which makes me come across as sullen. Story 9. Anxiety from my mom, depression from my dad, migraines from my mom, frequent tension headaches from my dad, lack of empathy from my mom, mild autism from my dad. At least I also inherited my mom's math and my dad's writing abilities, or else I'd be quite the mess of a human being. Story 10. A streak of manipulative narcissism from my mother that, when coupled with my mom's alcoholism, didn't make for an ideal childhood. Fortunately, I have not inherited her alcoholism, but only the manipulative trait. I have to make conscious choices not to lie and be a manipulative piece of crap when interacting with people I like. Story 11. Gluten intolerant/celiac. Mom has it, my sister has it. I feel like I'm inconveniencing people in order to eat at restaurants that can provide safe food for me to eat. My dad's a thinker, and my mom generally looks at stuff in a negative light, so being a pessimistic thinker on top of all that kind of sucks too. I think it's developed into a wistful cynicism at times due to my dad's ability to find humor in just about anything. I mean, honestly, I feel like more and more these days finding gluten-free options is becoming easier and easier. I guess it might depend on where you live, but I have someone with celiac disease in my family, and it is becoming so much less of a problem these days compared to even 5 years ago. Don't lose hope. Story 12. I cannot, no matter what, not know something. If there's a surprise I've been promised, I have to know what it is. A fact I'm not sure of, I have to look it up to the point of distraction. I just go straight up crazy otherwise. I thought it was just me until I heard my mom badgering my dad to tell her what his big anniversary surprise was a few years ago, but nope, I've definitely picked it up from her. Story 13. Procrastination. My dad would always complain about how my granddad was a huge procrastinator and his grand plans for modernizing the farm they lived on, etc., which all came to basically nothing. I noticed my dad has the same issues with his grand plans for retirement, and now here I am, in work, on the internet. Story 14. No discipline. I never had any rules growing up. My parents always had some late bill they had to pay, plans were always up in the air. I had to learn a lot of things from my own experience, whether I was ready for it or not. Story 15. Chronic depression and anxiety. I resent it even more because they were against treatment, and I spent more than a decade suffering needlessly. Story 16. Poor timekeeping, specifically making me feel like this was always okay growing up. They never picked me up on time, we were always at least a little late for appointments or social events, and that was fine. I'm not trying really hard to break that habit, but at 29, it's a tough one to shake off. Oof, yeah, at 29, that can be a tough one. Honestly, these days, I get into the routine of planning to be places significantly earlier than needed. If I am late, I end up being on time. And if I actually do get there as early as I attempt to, I get to watch episodes of a show on my phone that I am only allowed to watch when early. Still takes self-discipline, but I like making it a challenging game with rewards. Story 17. Neat nuts. Our parents passed it on. Everything has to be neat, clean, and in order around the house. Even shirts in the closet are hung by size and color. Story 18. For passing on their tendency to hold a grudge. I'll never forgive them for that. Story 19. Addictive tendencies and a particular fondness for food. Not in the best shape. Edit. Been viewing houses all afternoon and came back to a ton of advice and support. Thanks, guys. Story 20. My dad's irrational anger/temper. I hate it. It's very hard to control. What makes it worse is I realize how childish and ridiculous it looks having grown up dealing with my dad's anger. Story 21. A poor relationship with food. Finish your plate, they said. There are starving children in Africa, they said. Now I eat when I'm supposed to, as opposed to eating for satiation. It dissociated hunger from eating and turned into bad eating habits. Story 22. My dad is a worrier. To make matters worse, he would warn us that he comes from a family of worriers and told us to expect to worry about everything in the future. Guess what? I worry about everything. Dealing with worry is a tough one, but it might help to talk to someone professional about it, like a therapist. Sometimes dealing with the root of what brings up these worries in the first place might help. Otherwise, here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it, note for note. Story 23. Allergies. Could they have kept it to themselves? Also, they made the conscious decision to not pass this trait on to either of my siblings, just me. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Story 24. My mother has a square face. My father has a big head. Of course, I couldn't get one or the other, so now I'm walking around with this giant but square head. Story 25. I was arguing with my mom and realized I was talking just like my dad. Then when I was arguing with my dad, I realized I was talking just like my mom. It's a really horrifying realization. Story 26. Male pattern baldness with hair loss starting at 20 years old. F my genes. Bald with a beard is a super cool look right now, and it will always be cool too. Trust me, it has to be true. It just has to. Story 27. Borderline personality disorder, anxiety, depression, and ADHD. Story 28. Mental illness and addictive tendencies. Thankfully for today, I have my addictions behind me. Story 29. Going gray early. Started dyeing my hair now at 28 and wasn't planning on it till 40 plus. Getting a haircut requires some coordination too now. I am so jealous. Seriously, going gray is such a good look. The transitional years of having that salt and pepper, that looks so damned good on anyone, and I will die on that hill. And completely gray? Steve Martin. Enough said. Story 30. Horrifically hairy thighs, like a carpet remnant. Story 31. Anxiety and not being able to grow facial hair. Story 32. Caring too much about what other people think. Story 33. Moles. Moles everywhere. Holy moly. Story 34. We always do more than we should, not because we're overachievers, but because we're insecure. Story 35. Body hair. God, it's everywhere. You know that old dilemma? I look even hairier because I'm very pale, and I'm pale because I'm embarrassed of my hairiness. Also, short-sightedness. Being hairy's making a comeback, I feel. Like, not with everyone, but I know plenty of people who like a person with some good natural body hair. And honestly, confidence is key with a lot of this. I know just saying be confident is kind of useless, but it is something to think about and look into. Story 36. A lack of real-world knowledge. Story 37. My chronic migraines. My dad has it, and to rub salt in the wound, mine are more severe. Story 38. Back problems. I'm only 20. If I stand too long, my back will start killing me. Story 39. My dad's unibrow. I'm female. Story 40. Being instinctively argumentative. Thanks, Mom. Story 41. Being short. Story 42. My long butt nose. Okay, I mean, that one is a bit of a problem. I mean, I can't imagine people liking that look, and frankly, having one would be awful. Who would want a nose on their butt? The smells alone? Just awful. Wait a sec. Story 43. I'm a girl, have wide feet. Shoe shopping sucks. Story 44. Mom, the crazy. Dad, the insecurity. Both the ugly. Story 45. Bald head, hair everywhere else. Story 46. Life. Those bastards. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.